The screen is black. We hear the faint, rhythmic sound of a baby breathing softly. Then, a hushed, trembling whisper. "I'm so sorry. Sweet girl. I'm so sorry." The image fades in, blurry at first, then sharpens. I'm kneeling on the floor of a dimly lit bedroom, my hands shaking as I carefully place a small, worn teddy bear into a diaper bag. The only light comes from a superhero-themed nightlight, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. Beside me, in her crib, lies my niece, Scarlett. She's 18 months old, a tiny bundle of innocence wrapped in a pink fleece onesie, her chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of sleep. My heart feels like it's being squeezed in a vice. Every quiet breath she takes feels like a countdown. "I have to do this," I whisper, my voice cracking. Tears blur my vision, and I hastily wipe them away with the back of my hand. "I have to get you out of here." I zip the bag, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. I listen, holding my breath, waiting for any sign that I've woken someone up. The old house groans around me, the familiar sounds of settling wood now feeling like accusations. I gently lift Scarlett from her crib. She stirs for a moment, making a soft cooing sound before snuggling her head into the crook of my neck. Her warmth, her absolute trust in me, is a dagger in my chest. This is a betrayal, even if it's the only right thing to do. With Scarlett secure in my arms and the diaper bag slung over my shoulder, I inch toward the bedroom door. I turn the knob with agonizing slowness. The latch clicks, and I freeze. Nothing. I pull the door open just enough to slip through, my body tense. The hallway is a cavern of darkness, a path lined with closed doors and sleeping monsters. One of those monsters is my sister, Jenna, Scarlett's mother. I glance at her door, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. I have to get us out before she wakes up, before anyone does. I take one step, then another, my bare feet silent on the worn wooden floor. The front door seems a mile away. My escape, our escape. The air is thick with the weight of what I'm about to dot your family apart, to save one small piece of it, my own. The image begins to fade. Scarlett's soft breathing, the last thing we hear before it's replaced by the cheerful, jarring sound of a morning cartoon. 3 weeks earlier, the smell of burnt toast hung heavy in the air. That was my first clue that the morning was already off the rails. I juggled a squirming Scarlett on my hip with one arm while scraping the blackened edges of a slice of bread into the sink with the other. I know. It's a tragedy," I murmured to her as she pointed a chubby finger at the ruined breakfast. A moment of silence for our fallen soldier. Scarlett giggled, a sound like tiny bells, and patted my cheek. At 19, I had become an expert in the art of the one-handed operation. Making coffee, tying my shoes, writing a paper for my sociology classy, could do it all with a toddler attached to my body. It wasn't a skill I ever asked for, but it was one I had perfected out of necessity. Our house, a modest 2-story in a quiet suburb of Chicago, always felt a little too small for the 5 of us. It was a place of organized chaos, filled with the scent of my mom's cooking, the sound of my dad's sports commentary from the living room, and the constant, thrumming bass line of tension that came with my sister, Jenna. Just then, she made her grand entrance. At 24, Jenna moved through life as if she were the main character in a movie only she was watching. She descended the stairs not like someone who had just woken up, but like someone making their debut. She was wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my textbooks for the semester, her phone already in hand, a slight pout on her lips as she scrolled through whatever drama had unfolded overnight. "Morning," she said, her voice airy, her eyes never leaving the screen. She drifted past me and Scarlett, heading straight for the coffee pot. She didn't glance at her daughter, didn't acknowledge the fact that I had been up with her since 6 a.m. "Morning," I replied, my tone flat. I turned my attention back to Scarlett, mashing up a banana for her in a small bowl. Someone had a big night. Jenna sighed dramatically, pouring coffee into a mug that said "good vibes only." "You have no idea," Chloe had a complete meltdown over some guy named Brad. I was up until 2, counseling her. It was exhausting. I bit back the sarcastic remark that wanted to escape. My own exhaustion, the kind that came from walking a feverish baby back and forth for hours, didn't seem to register on her scale. Right. Well, Scarlett's been up since 6. She missed you, I said, spooning some banana into Scarlett's waiting mouth. Jenna finally looked over, a practiced, slightly distant smile on her face. Oh, my sweet little angel. She cooed, walking over to plant a quick, airlight kiss on the top of Scarlett's head. The scent of her expensive perfume filled the space between us. Mommy missed you too. Scarlett just stared at her, banana smeared on her cheek, before turning back to me, holding out her arms to be picked up. My heart ached. A child should look for her mother, but Scarlett always looked for me. The back door opened, and Mom came in from the garden, her hands covered in dirt. Susan, my mom, was the family's peacekeeper. She operated under the belief that if you just ignored a problem long enough, it might go away. Her love for Jenna was fierce, but it was a blind love, the kind that made excuses instead of demanding accountability. Jenna, honey, you're up, she said, smiling warmly. Did you sleep well? Barely, Jenna said, leaning against the counter. I have so much to do today. I have that interview for the receptionist job, and then I have to meet Ashley for lunch to network. It's all just so much. I watched the exchange, a familiar scene in a long-running play. Jenna would list her vague, important-sounding obligations. Mom would nod sympathetically, offering to help in any way she could, which always meant taking care of Scarlett. Well, you just focus on your day, dear, Mom said, wiping her hands on her apron. Leo and I have Scarlett. You're a lifesaver. Mom, Jenna said, giving her a quick hug. She grabbed a granola bar from the pantry. Okay, I've got to go get ready. Leo, can you make sure her bag is packed for daycare? They need that permission slip for the field trip to the pumpkin patch. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I was the one who had filled out the permission slip. I was the one who remembered it was show and tell day, and had helped Scarlett pick out her favorite stuffed dinosaur. Jenna was merely a guest in her own daughter's life, checking in when it was convenient. As she disappeared up the stairs, Mom turned to me, her expression softening. I know it's a lot, Leo, but she's trying. It's not easy being a single mom. She's not a single mom. Mom, I said, my voice low so only she could hear. She's a single woman who happens to have a child. You, me, and Dad, we're the ones raising her. Mom's face fell, the familiar look of disappointment that I wasn't playing my part. Don't say that, Leo. That's not fair. But it was fair. It was the truest thing in this entire house. I looked down at Scarlett, who was now trying to fit her whole fist in her mouth. I loved this little girl with a fierceness that scared me sometimes. I loved her enough to fill the empty spaces her own mother left behind. But the weight of that love, of that responsibility, was starting to crush me. Later that day, I sat in the back of my Sociology 101 lecture, trying to focus on a discussion about societal structures. But my mind was elsewhere. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Jenna. Interview went great. Think I got it. Going to celebrate with Ashley. Prob be home late. Can you pick up Scar from daycare? Us. The best. I stared at the message. A cold, familiar anger bubbling in my chest. There was no question. It was an expectation. My professor was talking about the breakdown of the traditional family unit, and I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. He had no idea. I left class early, my professor giving me a disapproving look. The drive to the daycare was automatic. I knew the route by heart. As I walked in, the cheerful chaos of kids playing and laughing washed over me. Mrs. Gable, the daycare director, greeted me with a warm but weary smile. Leo, good to see you, she said, handing me Scarlett's daily report card. It detailed her naps, her meals, her diaper changes, A log of a life that Jenna would never read. Hey, Mrs. Gable. How was she today? An absolute angel. As always, she said, lowering her voice slightly. But she did have a bit of a cry during nap time. Kept calling for you. My heart twisted. Not for her mom. For me. We have the parent-teacher conferences coming up next month. Mrs. Gable continued, handing me a sign-up sheet. We really need Jenna to attend this one. We've been noticing a few things with Scarlett's speech development. We'd like to discuss with her primary caregiver. She looked at me pointedly. We both knew who that was. I'll make sure she gets the message, I said, the words tasting like a lie. I picked up Scarlett, who squealed with delight and threw her arms around my neck, burying her face in my shoulder. In that moment, holding her, breathing in her sweet, baby shampoo scent, the anger melted away, replaced by a fierce, protective love. It was just us. It had always been just us. On the way home, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was fine. I couldn't let Scarlett grow up thinking this was normal. That night, I would talk to Jenna. I would make her listen. I would make her see what she was throwing away. I was naive. I thought a conversation could fix years of selfishness. I had no idea that we weren't just dealing with cracks in the foundation. The whole house was about to come crashing down. That evening, I set the stage. I made sure Scarlett was fed, bathed, and peacefully asleep in her crib. I tidied the living room. I waited and waited. Dad came home from his construction job, grunted a hello, grabbed a beer, and settled in front of the TV. Mom was in the kitchen, humming along to the radio, pretending the tension in the house wasn't thick enough to cut with a knife. Jenna finally walked in around 10 o'clock, flushed and happy, smelling of wine and whatever trendy downtown restaurant she'd been to. Hey, everyone, she chirped, dropping her purse on the floor. Jenna, we need to talk, I said, standing up. My voice was calmer than I felt. Her smile faltered. Ooh, that sounds serious. Can it wait? I'm exhausted. No, I said firmly. It can't. I laid it all out. The daycare pickup, the parent-teacher conference, the fact that her daughter cried for me. Not her. I tried to be calm, to be rational. I wasn't accusing. I was pleading. Jenna listened, her arms crossed, a defensive look hardening her features. When I was finished, she let out a short, humorless laugh. Are you done? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Are you done with your little lecture on how to be a perfect parent? You're 19. Leo, you're a kid playing house. You have no idea what real pressure is. Real pressure? I shot back, my own voice rising. I'm the one juggling 2 jobs and a full course load while making sure your daughter is fed and safe. What pressure are you under? Deciding which filter to use on Instagram. You think that's all my life is? She scoffed. I'm trying to build a future for us. For me and Scarlett. That interview today was important. The interview that ended with celebratory drinks until 10 at night. Her eyes narrowed. You have no right to judge me. I'm her mother. I do what's best for her. Do you? I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous low. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you do what's best for Jenna. And Scarlett? She's just an afterthought. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Mom appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face pale. Kids, please, stop. But we couldn't stop. The dam had broken. You're just jealous. Jenna spat, her voice filled with venom. You're jealous that I have a life, and you're stuck here changing diapers. Well, that was your choice. No one asked you to play martyr. That was it. The final straw. The dismissal of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of love I had poured into her child. You're right, I said, my voice eerily calm. It was a choice, and I'm starting to think I made the wrong one. I turned and walked away, heading upstairs. I could hear my mom trying to soothe Jenna. Jenna's indignant sobs. I closed my bedroom door, the sound shutting out the noise but not the pain. I sat on my bed, the weight of it all pressing down on me. She didn't see it. She would never see it. And as I stared at the wall, a terrifying thought began to form in my mind. If she wouldn't be a mother to Scarlett, maybe someone else had to be. The aftermath of our fight was a thick, suffocating silence that lasted for days. We moved around each other like ghosts, the unspoken words screaming in the space between us. Jenna treated me with a frosty disdain, communicating only through clipped, one-word answers or pointedly asking Mom for things I was standing right there to do. She was punishing me for telling the truth. Mom, ever the diplomat, tried to pretend nothing had happened, her forced cheerfulness more grating than the silence itself. Dad remained a phantom, leaving for work before the sun was up and returning long after the day's tensions had been swept under the rug. It was a masterclass in family dysfunction, and I was trapped in the front row. But something inside me had shifted. The resentment that had been simmering for months had now cooled into a hard, clear resolve. Jenna's accusation that I was playing martyr echoed in my head. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had enabled her by silently picking up the pieces. No more. My focus was singular now, Scarlett. Every decision, every action, had to be about her. The first test of this new resolve came a week later. Scarlett woke up with a whimper, one hand tugging at her ear, her face flushed and hot to the touch. I knew instantly it was another ear infection. She was prone to them, a fact Jenna would know if she ever paid attention during doctor's visits. I found the last of the infant Tylenol, measured out a dose, and rocked her in the old armchair in the living room, her small, feverish body trembling against mine. Jenna came downstairs around 9, looking refreshed and annoyingly vibrant in a new yoga outfit. She was heading to a brunch with her friends. Morning, she said, avoiding my eyes as she grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. Scarlett has a fever, I said, my voice level, and she keeps pulling at her ear. I think it's another infection. Jenna barely paused. Oh, poor thing. Give her some Tylenol. She'll probably be fine by this afternoon. She needs to see a doctor, I stated. Not a request, but a fact. I can't get an appointment until this afternoon at 3. I have a midterm at 2:30 I can't miss. This was it, the moment of truth. I watched her, waiting. Her jaw tightened. I could see the internal calculation in her iced annoyance, the inconvenience, the disruption to her perfectly planned day. Leo, I can't, she said with a long-suffering sigh. I already promised Tiffany I'd be there. Her cousin from out of town is coming. It would be so rude to cancel now. Ruder than ignoring your sick child? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. It's just an earache, she snapped, her voice rising. You're being so dramatic. I'll take her to an urgent care clinic tonight if she's still fussy. Now I have to go, or I'll be late. She turned to leave. In that moment, watching her walk away from her sick, crying child in favor of mimosas and gossip, something inside me broke. It was a clean, sharp snap. The last thread of hope I had for her was gone. No, I said. She stopped, her hand on the doorknob. What did you say? I said no. I repeated, standing up with Scarlett still in my arms. You're not going anywhere. You are going to call your friend. You are going to cancel your brunch. And you are going to take your daughter to the doctor. Because that's what a mother does. She stared at me, her mouth agape, a mixture of shock and fury in her eyes. It was the first time I had ever given her a direct order concerning her own child. You can't be serious, she hissed. You can't tell me what to do. Watch me, I said, my gaze unwavering. I felt a strange sense of power, cold and absolute. If you walk out that door, Jenna, I swear to you, things are going to change in this house in a way you won't like. You want to be a part-time mom? Fine. Then you can have a part-time life here, with part-time access to my help, to Mom's help. We were in a standoff, her selfishness versus my resolve. The air crackled. From the kitchen, I could hear the water suddenly shut off. Mom was listening. For the first time, She didn't rush in to smooth things over. She was letting it play out. Jenna's face twisted into an ugly sneer. You think you can threaten me? Fine. Be that way. She turned, wrenched the door open, and slammed it shut behind her. The sound echoed through the house, a declaration of war. I looked down at Scarlett, whose cries had subsided into soft whimpers. She looked up at me with big, glassy eyes, her little body radiating heat. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had lost. She had called my bluff. But then, a minute later, the front door opened again. Jenna stood there, her face pale, her phone pressed to her ear. Yeah, Tiff, I'm so sorry. Something's come up with Scarlett, she was saying, her voice a strained, fake sweet apology. I know. I'm totally bummed. We'll have to reschedule. She hung up and glared at me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. Happy now. I didn't answer. I just walked over, gently transferred a feverish Scarlett into her arms, and handed her the diaper bag. Her appointment is at 3. Don't be late. I walked away without another word, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. It wasn't a victory. It felt dirty, hollow. I had to threaten my own sister into caring for her child. As I gathered my books for my exam, a grim realization settled over me. This was just the beginning. The doctor confirmed it was a severe double ear infection and prescribed a strong course of antibiotics. Scarlett needed a dose every 12 hours, on the dot, for the next 10 days. When Jenna came home, she tossed the prescription bottle on the kitchen counter. There, all taken care of, she announced, as if she deserved a medal. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a nap. All that waiting around was exhausting. I picked up the bottle. The instructions were clear. The responsibility, as always, fell to me. For the next week, my life became a rigid schedule dictated by the clock. A 7 a.m. dose, a 7 p.m. dose. I rescheduled a shift at my part-time library job. I stayed up late catching up on homework I'd missed while comforting Scarlett. I was a walking zombie, fueled by caffeine and a relentless sense of duty. Jenna, meanwhile, seemed to exist in a parallel universe. She acted as if the confrontation had never happened, retreating back into her world of social engagements and self-interest. She'd pop in to see Scarlett when she was happy and playful. But the moment the baby got fussy or needed a diaper change, she'd conveniently have an important call to make. She outsourced the difficult parts of motherhood, leaving me to handle the fevers, the tears, and the medicine. It was during this time that I started keeping a journal, not a diary of my feelings, but a log, a cold, factual record. October 12th, 9:15 p.m., Jenna went out with friends. Scarlett woke up crying from ear pain, gave Tylenol, rocked her back to sleep. Jenna came home at 1:30 a.m. October 14th, 7 p.m., time for Scarlett's antibiotic. Jenna was on a FaceTime call with some guy, laughing. I had to interrupt her. She looked annoyed. October 16th, 11 a.m., Jenna said she had a big job interview and couldn't be disturbed. Spent 2 hours getting ready. Found out later from her Instagram story she was at a bottomless brunch. Each entry was a small, hard stone dropped into a bucket, and the bucket was getting heavy. The breaking point, the real inciting incident that set the final, catastrophic events in motion, wasn't a dramatic fight. It was a quiet moment of horrifying realization. It was a Saturday. Jenna had announced she was going on a business trip for the weekend, a networking conference in the city. She claimed. She packed an overnight bag, gave Scarlett a perfunctory kiss, and left. Be a good girl for Uncle Leo, she'd said. That evening, I was giving Scarlett her 7 p.m. dose. As I was putting the antibiotic bottle away in the medicine cabinet, something fell out. It was a small, square packet. I picked it up. It was a sample of a new, high-end skincare product. Attached to it was a little card. Enjoy your stay at the Westin. Ms. Adams, we hope you and Mr. Foster have a wonderful anniversary weekend. My blood ran cold. Mr. Foster. Derek Foster. That was the name of the guy she'd been talking to constantly for the past month. An anniversary weekend? My hands started to shake as the pieces clicked into place. The fake job interviews. The constant need for a babysitter. The business trip. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed facade to hide her relationship. I felt a wave of nausea. It wasn't just that she was lying. It was the depth of the deception. She wasn't just neglecting her daughter. She was actively building a separate life. A life where Scarlett didn't exist. And she was using all of us, Mom, Dad, as the unpaid staff that made it possible. I walked into the living room, my mind reeling. I sat down on the couch, the skincare sample still clutched in my hand. Scarlett was in her playpen, babbling happily to her stuffed animals. She was so blissfully unaware. She was living in the eye of a hurricane, and the storm was about to hit. I looked at her, so small, so dependent, so utterly at the mercy of our broken family. A fierce, cold anger rose in me, overriding the hurt and betrayal. This wasn't about my feelings anymore. This was about her safety, her future. Jenna wasn't just a bad mom. She was a danger to her own child, not in a physical way, but in a way that was almost worse. She was a black hole of selfishness, sucking all the light and love and stability out of the room. And Scarlett was trapped in her orbit. I unlocked my phone, my fingers moving with a grim purpose. I opened Instagram. I typed Derek Foster's name into the search bar. His profile was public, and there it was, the most recent post, from just 1 hour ago. A picture of 2 champagne glasses clinking together, with the Chicago skyline sparkling in the background through a hotel window. The caption read, "Celebrating 1 year with my amazing girl. The best is yet to come." Jenna had liked the post. I took a screenshot, then another. I went through his profile, screenshotting every picture that had a hint of Jenna in the background, every comment she'd left. I was gathering evidence. I didn't know what for yet, but I knew I would need it. The war was no longer silent, and I was done fighting fair. Jenna returned from her business trip on Sunday evening, floating into the house on a cloud of feigned exhaustion and self-importance. She carried a small gift bag from a touristy Chicago shop, the kind of cheap afterthought you buy at the airport. "I am so drained," she announced to the living room, dropping her overnight bag. Non-stop networking. You wouldn't believe the people I met. I was sitting on the floor, building a block tower with Scarlett. I didn't look up. Must have been tough. "You have no idea," she said, missing the sarcasm entirely. She handed Scarlett a small, plastic snow globe with the city skyline inside. "Look what Mommy brought you, sweetie." Scarlett took the globe, shook it once, then immediately tried to put it in her mouth. I gently took it from her and placed it on a high shelf. "So, how was she?" Jenna asked, already pulling out her phone. "Any trouble?" "No trouble," I said, my voice tight. "She finished her antibiotics this morning. Her ear infection seems to have cleared up. See, I told you it was nothing to worry about," she said dismissively, her thumbs flying across her screen. She was probably texting Derek, recounting their romantic getaway while I had been meticulously administering medicine and checking for fevers. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Mom came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Welcome home. Honey, are you hungry? I saved you some pot roast." "Oh, I couldn't eat a thing," Jenna said, waving a dismissive hand. "We had a huge catered lunch at the conference. So fancy." The lies flowed from her so easily, so naturally. I wondered if she even knew she was doing it anymore. I watched my mother fuss over her, buying every word, and a bitter pill of resentment lodged itself in my throat. My mom wasn't stupid, but she chose to be blind. Her denial was a wall that protected Jenna, and it was a prison for the rest of us. For the next few days, I was a ghost in my own home. I performed my duty as caring for Scarlett, going to class, working my shifts with a quiet, mechanical efficiency. But inside, I was a coiled spring. The screenshots on my phone felt like a physical weight in my pocket. A secret arsenal waiting to be deployed. I just didn't know when. Or how. The opportunity, when it came, was messier than I could have imagined. It started, as most of our conflicts did, over something small and stupid. It started with a banana. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I had just picked Scarlett up from daycare. She was in that fussy, post-nap transitional phase, and I knew a snack was the only thing that would bring her back from the brink of a full-blown meltdown. I sat her in her high chair and gave her a banana, her favorite. It was a messy snack. Sure, by the time she was done, she'd have banana in her hair, on the tray, and probably on the wall, but she was happy, and that's all that mattered. I was wiping down the counter when Jenna walked in. She was dressed to go out, wearing a tight black dress and heels that were completely impractical for a suburban Wednesday. She took one look at the Senna Scarlett happily squishing banana through her tiny finger sand. Her face contorted in disgust. "Oh, for God's sake, Leo," she snapped. "Really? A banana?" I turned, my hand still holding the sponge. "What's wrong with a banana? What's wrong with it? Look at that mess," she said, gesturing dramatically at the high chair. "I have to clean that up later. You know, you're just making my life harder. Why couldn't you have given her some of those little rice puffs?" My knuckles turned white as I gripped the edge of the counter. The sheer, unadulterated selfishness of her complaint, not that it was unhealthy, not that Scarlett might choke, but that it would be an inconvenience for her to clean up, was staggering, especially since we both knew she wouldn't be the one cleaning it. "You won't be cleaning it up, Jenna," I said, my voice dangerously low and even. "I will. Just like I clean up every other mess. You don't have to worry about your life getting any harder." "Oh, here we go again." She rolled her eyes. "Saint Leo, suffering for all of us. You know, you have a real martyr complex, and you have a responsibility complex." I shot back, turning to face her fully. "As in, you have no sense of responsibility whatsoever. I am a great mom," she shrieked, her voice rising in pitch. "I work hard to provide for her." "Provide what? Excuses." I laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. "You haven't worked a steady job in over a year. Mom and Dad pay for everything. I'm the one who buys her diapers half the time because you spent your money on, what was it this week? A new dress?" I gestured towards the one she was wearing. Her face flushed a deep, angry red. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I had an interview today." "The brunch interview?" I asked, my voice dripping with scorn. "How dare you?" she yelled, taking a step toward me. Scarlett, sensing the explosive anger in the room, started to cry. Her small, frightened wails pierced the tension. "Don't you dare act indignant with me," I said, my own voice rising to match hers. "Don't you stand there and lie to my face, to this entire family, day after day." "I am not a liar." That was it. The spring uncoiled. "No. What about your business trip last weekend?" I asked, pulling my phone from my pocket. Her eyes widened in panic. "How was the networking in Miami?" "Jenna." I turned the phone around, displaying the picture of her and Derek, their beaming faces illuminated by the Florida sun. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Scarlett's terrified sobs. Jenna stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. The color drained from her face. She looked cornered, trapped. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of shame, of remorse, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a venomous rage. You spied on me?" she whispered, her voice trembling with fury. "You went through my things? You're sick. You're obsessed. You posted it on the internet for the whole world to see. You idiot," I yelled, finally losing control. "You weren't just lying to me. You were broadcasting your lies while your daughter was here, sick, needing her mother. You were off playing house with your boyfriend and pretending she didn't exist. Stop it." Mom's voice cut through the chaos. She had appeared in the doorway, her face ashen. She rushed to the high chair, scooping a crying Scarlett into her arms. "Stop it, both of you. You're scaring the baby." She turned to me, her eyes pleading. Leo, put the phone away. Whatever this is not the way. No. Mom, I said, my voice shaking with adrenaline. This is the only way. You want to keep pretending? You want to keep making excuses for her? Look at it. I thrust the phone in her direction. This is who your daughter is. A liar. A selfish, irresponsible person who cares more about her social life than her own child. Mom flinched, turning her head away as if the picture itself could burn her. That's enough. It's not enough, I insisted, my voice cracking. I felt a wild, desperate need to make them see, to shatter the comfortable illusion they had all been living in. Jenna, seeing Mom's hesitation as a sign of allegiance, seized the opportunity. She started to cry. Big, theatrical sobs. Mom, he's trying to turn you against me, she wailed, collapsing onto a kitchen chair. He's always been jealous of me. He wants to take Scarlett away. He's twisting everything. It was a masterful performance. She was the victim, the wrong single mother being attacked by her cruel, obsessive brother. I watched in disbelief as my mother's expression softened, her protective instincts kicking in for the wrong child. Leo, maybe you should just go to your room and cool off, Mom said gently, still rocking a whimpering Scarlett. I stared at her, my heart sinking into a cold, dark pit. She had seen the proof. She had heard the lies, and she still chose to look the other way. She was still choosing to protect the person causing the harm over the people being hurt. You can't be serious, I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a profound sense of defeat. Mom, look at me. You know I'm right. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She focused on Scarlett, stroking her hair, murmuring soothing words. By not choosing a side, she had chosen Jenna's. I felt a profound sense of isolation, of being utterly alone in this fight. It wasn't just me against Jenna anymore. It was me against my entire family's suffocating denial. Jenna looked up at me from behind her hands, a triumphant, hateful smirk visible through her fake tears. She had won. She had successfully manipulated the situation, turning my righteous anger into a childish tantrum in our mother's eyes. I looked from my sister's smirking face to my mother's averted gaze. I looked at Scarlett, who was now staring at me over Mom's shoulder, her big blue eyes filled with confusion and fear. In that moment, I knew that a conversation wouldn't fix this. An argument wouldn't fix this. The only thing that could fix this was a fundamental shift in the power dynamic of our home. And if I had to be the earthquake that caused it, so be it. Fine, I said, my voice hollow. I'll cool off. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, not to my room, but straight out the back door into the chilly October air. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. The lines had been drawn, and I was standing on one side, all by myself. The log in my journal was no longer enough. I needed more. I needed a plan. The backyard was my only sanctuary. I sank onto the cold, damp steps of the back porch, the screen door sighing shut behind me. The autumn air was sharp, carrying the earthy smell of decaying leaves. I drew it deep into my lungs, trying to calm the frantic, helpless rage that was churning in my gut. They didn't see. They wouldn't see. My own mother had looked at undeniable proof of Jenna's deception and had chosen to look away. It felt like a betrayal deeper than anything Jenna had ever done. I sat there for what felt like hours, watching the sky bleed from gray to a bruised purple. The anger slowly subsided, replaced by a chilling clarity. My family wasn't going to save Scarlett. They were enablers, caught in a cycle of excuses and denial. Mom coddled Jenna out of a misguided sense of maternal duty, and Dad's silence was a form of passive consent. They were all complicit in her neglect. If I wanted to protect Scarlett, I couldn't rely on anyone but myself. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my best friend. Marcus, you alive? We still on for studying tonight? Marcus was the only person outside of this house who knew the full extent of the situation. His family was the complete opposite of mine, loud, loving, and brutally honest with each other. He was my lifeline to normalcy. I texted back, Change of plans. Need to talk. Your place. His reply was instantaneous. Doors open. I went back inside, avoiding the kitchen. The house was quiet. Jenna had probably retreated to her room to bask in her victory, and Mom was likely putting Scarlett to bed, whispering reassurances that everything was fine. But nothing was fine. I grabbed my jacket and keys and left, the need to escape the suffocating atmosphere of my home more urgent than any exam. Marcus's house was a 10-minute drive away, but it felt like crossing into another dimension. The warm glow from the windows, the sound of his mom laughing in the kitchen, the smell of garlic bread. It was everything my house wasn't. Marcus met me on his porch, a worried look on his face. "Dude, you look like hell." "Feel like it," I muttered, following him inside to the basement, our designated hangout spot since we were kids. I laid it all out for him. Banana. The argument. The screenshots. My mom's reaction. I talked until my throat was raw, the words tumbling out in a torrent of frustration and despair. Marcus just listened, his expression growing more serious with every detail. When I finally finished, he was quiet for a moment, just shaking his head slowly. "Man, I'm sorry. That's messed up." "Messed up doesn't even cover it." "Marcus," I said, running a hand through my hair, "I feel like I'm losing my mind. Am I the crazy one here? Am I overreacting?" "No," he said firmly, looking me straight in the eye. "You are not the crazy one. Your sister is a piece of work, and your mom is enabling her. What you're doing, standing up for Scarlett, that's the sanest thing in this whole situation." Hearing him say it, so simply and with such conviction, felt like a dam breaking inside me. The self-doubt, the fear that maybe I was the villain Jenna painted me to be, washed away. "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't keep living like this. Scarlett can't." Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. His dad was a family lawyer. He had grown up hearing stories far worse than mine. "Honestly, Leo, you need to start thinking like a lawyer. You need to build a case." "A case for what?" "For whatever comes next," he said, his tone serious. "Custody, maybe, or at least getting your parents to wake up and set some real boundaries. You said you've been keeping a log. That's good. That's a start. But you need more than that." "More like what?" "Proof," he said. "Hard proof. Receipts. Photos. Timestamps. Anything that shows a pattern of neglect. Every time she leaves Scarlett with you to go party. Document it. Every time she misses a doctor's appointment. Save the paperwork. Every dollar you spend on Scarlett that she should be spending. Keep the receipt. You need to create a record so detailed, so undeniable, that no one, not even your mom, can ignore it." His words sparked something in me. A plan. A strategy. It felt cold and calculating, almost clinical, to approach my family this way. But he was right. My emotional appeals had failed. It was time for cold, hard facts. "My dad," I said, thinking aloud. "He's different from my mom. He's all about responsibility, hard work. He doesn't say much, but he sees everything. If I could show him, if I could lay out a case he couldn't argue with." "Exactly," Marcus said. "He's your target audience. Your mom operates on feelings. Your dad operates on facts and figures. You need to speak his language." I left Marcus's house that night with a renewed sense of purpose. The despair had been replaced by a steely determination. I was no longer just Scarlett's caregiver. I was her advocate, her defender, and I would gather an arsenal of truth so powerful it would force my family to confront the reality they had tried so hard to avoid. The next 2 weeks were a strange, tense ballet of covert operations. I became a meticulous record keeper. I bought a small notebook that I kept hidden in my room, and in it, I documented everything. November 2nd, Jenna left at 8 p.m., said she was going to a study group, returned at 3 a.m. smelling of alcohol. I was up with Scarlett, who had a nightmare. November 5th, daycare called. Monthly fees are overdue. Jenna claimed she paid them online. I checked the portal. She hadn't. I paid the $400 balance with money from my savings account. Kept the email receipt. November 9th, Scarlett ran out of formula. Asked Jenna to pick some up on her way home. She forgot. I had to run to the 24-hour Walgreens at 10 p.m. Kept the receipt. I took pictures of her messy piles of laundry she ignored. Dirty dishes she left in the sink. I saved texts where she bailed on her responsibilities. I even started a separate bank account, transferring money into it and labeling each transaction. 44 japers. 25 for baby food. $15 for rash cream. It was a grim accounting of her maternal debt. Living this way was corrosive. It changed me. I felt like a spy in my own home. Every interaction with Jenna was tainted by my secret mission. I was polite but distant, careful not to trigger another confrontation. I was playing a long game. Jenna, for her part, seemed to relish the Cold War between us. With me backing off, she felt free. Her nights out became more frequent. Derek, her boyfriend, was no longer a secret. He started coming up in her conversations with Mom, painted as a successful, supportive partner who was so good with kids, even though he had met Scarlett exactly once for 5 minutes. One evening, I overheard her on the phone with him in the hallway. Her voice a low, excited whisper. "No, it's totally fine." She was saying, "My brother is obsessed with her, so he basically handles everything. It's like having a live-in nanny, but for free. It gives us way more freedom." I stood frozen in my bedroom doorway, the words hitting me like a physical blow. A free nanny. That's all I was to her. A convenience. A tool that allowed her to live her life unburdened. The hurt was so sharp, so intense, it almost buckled my knees. But then, the cold resolve washed over me again, stronger than ever. She was giving me the ammunition I needed. I quietly pulled out my phone and started recording the audio. The tipping point, the event that would take my secret investigation and blow it wide open, came on a Friday night. It was the night of my dad's company dinner, an annual event he always attended with my mom. It was the one night a year they both went out, and it was understood that either Jenna or I would stay home with Scarlett. "I'll stay," I had offered immediately, but Jenna had other plans. "Actually," she'd said, an unusually sweet smile on her face, "I was thinking I would stay in tonight. Give you a night off? Leo, you deserve it." I was immediately suspicious. Jenna never volunteered for duty, but Mom was thrilled, seeing it as a sign that Jenna was finally stepping up. "Oh, that's wonderful, honey." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Marcus had invited me to see a movie with his family. A night of normalcy sounded like a godsend. Before I left, I went over everything with Jenna. Her bedtime is at 8. She gets one story. Make sure you give her the stuffed elephant, not the bear, or she won't sleep. And her nightlight. I know, she said, waving me off impatiently. "I'm her mother. I think I can handle it. Go. Have fun." I hesitated at the door, a knot of anxiety twisting in my stomach. Scarlett was already in her pajamas, looking sleepy. She reached for me, her little brow furrowed. "Uncle Leo," she murmured. "I'll be back soon." "Sweet girl," I said, kissing her forehead. "You be good for Mommy." The knot didn't loosen the entire drive to the theater. It stayed there through the movie, a low-grade hum of dread that I couldn't shake. I kept checking my phone, but there were no calls, no texts. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe Jenna was actually trying. I got home around 11:30. The house was dark and eerily quiet. Too quiet. A single lamp was on in the living room. As I stepped inside, my foot hit something on the floor. It was the baby monitor receiver. It was turned off. My blood went cold. "Jenna," I called out, my voice echoing in the silent house. No answer. I bolted up the stairs, my heart pounding against my ribs. I pushed open the door to Scarlett's room. The room was dark. The nightlight was off, and the crib was empty. Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. For a second, My brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. An empty crib. A dark, silent room. The air was thick with wrongness. My mind raced through 1,000 horrific possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. "Jenna!" I screamed, my voice raw with terror. I flicked on the light switch. The room was empty. No sign of a struggle. Number note. Nothing. Just empty. I stumbled back into the hallway, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Jenna!" I threw open the door to her bedroom. Empty. Her bed was perfectly made. A new dress was laid out on a chair, tags still attached. I ran downstairs, checking every room, my calls growing more desperate. The living room, the kitchen, the downstairs bathroom. Nothing. They were gone. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely unlock my phone. I dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed again. Voicemail. A wave of pure, unadulterated terror washed over me. This wasn't a game. This wasn't her being irresponsible. This was something else. Something terrible. I was about to dial 911 when I heard a faint noise. A car door shutting outside. I ran to the front window, peering through the blinds. A sleek, unfamiliar car was parked at the curb. The passenger door opened, and Jenna got out. She was laughing, her head thrown back. She leaned back into the car for a long, lingering kiss. My paralysis broke, replaced by a surge of white-hot rage so intense it made me dizzy. I wrenched the front door open and stormed out onto the porch just as the car's headlights swept across the lawn and it pulled away. The cold night air hit my face, but I barely felt it. Jenna was walking up the path, a dreamy smile on her face. She stopped dead when she saw me. Her smile vanished. "Leo, you're home early. Where is she?" I asked, my voice a low, trembling growl. Jenna's eyes darted around nervously. "Where is who? What are you talking about? Don't you dare play dumb with me." I snarled, taking a step down toward her. "Where is Scarlett?" "Oh," she said, her voice attempting a casual tone that was utterly unconvincing. She's at Derek's. She was being really fussy. And he has this amazing guest room. And it's so quiet there. And I just thought." The world tilted. The blood drained from my face. She had taken my niece, an 18-month-old baby, out of her own bed, out of her home, and brought her to the apartment of a man she had been dating for a few months. A man I had never met. A man my parents had never met. "You did what?" I whispered, the words barely audible. "It's fine. Leo," she said defensively, her voice getting louder. "He's great with her. She fell right asleep. It's better than her being here, where you'd just be hovering over her all night." I stared at her, truly seeing her for the first time. It wasn't just selfishness. It wasn't just immaturity. There was something fundamentally broken inside her. A piece missing where empathy and maternal instinct should be. "Get in the car," I said, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "What? No, I'm not. Get in the car. Jenna," I roared, the sound ripping from my throat. "You're going to take me to her. Right now." Something in my voice, in my eyes, must have terrified her. For the first time, she looked truly scared of me. She fumbled for her keys, her hands shaking, and scurried to her beat-up sedan parked in the driveway. I got into the passenger seat, the silence in the car heavy and suffocating. "Which way?" I demanded. She gave me the address. A trendy, new apartment complex downtown. The 20-minute drive felt like an eternity. I didn't speak. I just stared straight ahead, my mind a maelstrom of rage and fear. What kind of person does that? What kind of mother takes her child from their safe, familiar environment to a stranger's apartment so she can have an uninterrupted date night? Every protective instinct in my body was screaming. I thought about all the things that could have gone wrong. What if Scarlett woke up, scared and alone in a strange place? What if there was an emergency? What if this Derek person wasn't the saint Jenna made him out to be? When we got to the apartment building, Jenna seemed to shrink. "Maybe I should just go up and get her," she said meekly. You can wait here. Not a chance, I said. Getting out of the car, we rode the elevator up in silence. My reflection in the polished steel doors was a stranger, a pale, grim-faced man with murder in his eyes. Jenna wouldn't look at me. She unlocked the apartment door, and we stepped inside. The place was sterile, modern, the kind of bachelor pad that screamed no kids allowed. In the living room, a man was asleep on the couch in front of a giant television. That must be Derek. He didn't stir. Jenna pointed to a closed door down a short hallway. She's in there. I walked past her, my steps silent on the plush carpet. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, but a sliver of city light from the window illuminated the space. It was a guest room, or maybe an office. In the middle of the room, on a low, modern bed with no railings, was a tiny lump under a duvet. It was Scarlett. She was fast asleep, her little thumb in her mouth. But beside her on the bed was a half-empty glass of wine and a laptop, still open. The room was cold. There was no nightlight, no stuffed elephant, none of the familiar comforts of her own room. There wasn't even a baby monitor. I felt a fresh wave of horror and rage. Anything could have happened. She could have rolled off the bed. She could have woken up and gotten into something. She could have been terrified. I gently scooped her up, her small body warm and limp with sleep. She stirred, murmuring my name in her sleep, and snuggled into my chest. That sound, that unconscious trust, broke me. I held her tight, buried my face in her soft hair, and fought back a sob. When I turned around, Jenna was standing in the doorway, wringing her hands. See, she's fine. You totally overreacted. I walked toward her, and for the first time, she flinched and took a step back. I didn't say a word. I just gave her a look of such profound contempt, such utter disgust, that she withered before my eyes. I walked past her, out of the apartment, carrying my precious cargo. The man on the couch snored softly, oblivious. The ride home was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of an ending. When we got back to the house, I took Scarlett straight to her room. I tucked her into her own crib, turned on her nightlight, and placed her stuffed elephant next to her. I stood there for a long time, just watching her breathe, my hand resting on her back. I was her protector, and tonight, I had failed her. I had left her in the care of a monster. Around 2 a.m., I heard my parents' car pull into the driveway. I heard them come inside, their voices low and happy from their night out. I met them at the bottom of the stairs. They saw the look on my face and their smiles faded. Leo, what's wrong? Mom asked, her hand flying to her chest. Is it Scarlett? She's fine, I said, my voice hoarse. No thanks to her mother. And then, I told them everything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I laid out the events of the night in a cold, methodical monotone. The empty crib, the lies, the stranger's apartment, the wine glass next to the bed. As I spoke, I watched my mother's face crumble. The denial, the excuse they were no match for the raw, ugly truth of what Jenna had done. This wasn't a matter of opinion or jealousy. This was a clear, terrifying act of endangerment. My dad, however, was silent. His face was like stone, his expression unreadable. When I finished, the only sound was my mom's quiet, horrified sobs. Jenna, who had been hiding in the kitchen, chose that moment to make her entrance. She had her victim face on, her eyes red-rimmed. He's exaggerating, she began, her voice trembling. He's trying to make me look like a bad mother. Nothing happened. She was perfectly safe. Safe. My dad spoke for the first time, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the room. He turned his gaze on Jenna, and I saw a look in his eyes I had never seen before, a look of pure, glacial disappointment. You left your child with a man we've never met. You took her out of her bed in the middle of the night so you could have a date. Derek is a good person. Jenna cried. I trust him. We don't, Dad said, his voice cutting through her excuses. And it's not your trust that matters here. You put that little girl at risk. You lied to all of us. You lied to Leo. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw that he finally understood. He saw the weight I'd been carrying, the truth I'd been trying to tell. He turned back to Jenna, who now seemed to realize that her tears and manipulations were useless against him. "Go to your room," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "We'll talk about this in the morning." Jenna opened her mouth to protest, saw the look on his face, and snapped it shut. She turned and fled up the stairs. My mom was still crying softly, looking lost and broken. My dad walked over to me and did something he rarely did. He put a hand on my shoulder. It was heavy, firm, a gesture of solidarity. "You did the right thing, son," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Go get some sleep. We'll sort this out." As I walked up the stairs, exhausted to my very bones, I knew he was right. Things were going to be sorted out. The storm I had been bracing for had finally broken, and the landscape of our family would never be the same. The morning after was not the explosion I had anticipated. It was worse. It was a heavy, oppressive quiet, the kind of stillness that follows a natural disaster, where everyone is afraid to move for fear of what they might find in the rubble. I was awake before dawn, having slept in restless, nightmare-filled bursts. I sat at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, the events of the previous night playing on a loop in my head. The empty crib, the terror, the cold fury. Mom was the first one up. She moved around the kitchen with a slow, deliberate fragility, avoiding my eyes. The cheerful hum that usually accompanied her morning routine was gone. She looked older, worn down by the ugly truth that had finally been forced into the light. She didn't offer any excuses for Jenna. She didn't try to smooth things over. She just poured her coffee and sat down opposite me, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. Dad came down next, dressed for work in his worn Carhartt jacket and steel-toed boots. He didn't look at either of us. He just grabbed a granola bar from the pantry, filled his thermos, and headed for the door. But before he left, he paused, his hand on the knob. "Nobody is going anywhere today," he said, his voice gravelly, directed at the room at large. "We settle this tonight, all of us." Then he was gone, the sound of his work truck starting up and fading down the street. It was a proclamation, a summons. Tonight would be the trial. Scarlett woke up soon after, her cheerful babbling from the baby monitor a jarring note of normalcy in the funereal atmosphere. I went up to get her, my heart clenching as I saw her safe in her crib, clutching her stuffed elephant. I lifted her into my arms, burying my face in her neck, breathing in her sweet, familiar scent. She was the calm in the center of the hurricane. The day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Jenna stayed locked in her room. I could hear her on the phone, her voice a low, angry murmur. She was probably talking to Derek, spinning her version of the story, painting herself as the victim of her controlling, hysterical family. I took care of Scarlett, moving through our usual route and break fast. Playtime, nap on autopilot. Every action was imbued with a new weight, a new significance. This might be the last day we spent like this, in this broken house, under this fragile truce. Mom drifted through the house like a wraith, tidying things that were already tidy, her movements aimless and heavy with grief. Around noon, she approached me while I was feeding Scarlett her lunch. "Leo," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "The things you said about keeping track of what Jenna does. The notebook." I tensed, ready for a lecture. "What about it?" She wrung her hands, her gaze fixed on the floor. "Your father, he wants to see it." I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The final act began at 6 o'clock sharp. Dad came home, his face grim and streaked with the grime of a long day's work. He didn't change his clothes. He just washed his hands at the kitchen sink and then sat down at the head of the dining room table, a spot usually reserved for holiday meals. "Susan, get Jenna," he said. It wasn't a request. Mom disappeared up the stairs and returned a few minutes later with Jenna in tow. My sister's face was puffy from crying. but her eyes were defiant. She was armed for battle. I was already sitting at the table, my hidden notebook and a small stack of receipts placed neatly in front of me. I had put Scarlett to bed early, not wanting her anywhere near the poison that was about to fill the room. We sat in silence for a full minute, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Dad looked at each of us in turn, his gaze hard and assessing. He was no longer the passive observer. He was the judge. "Jenna," he began, his voice calm but laced with steel. "I want to hear it from you. Tell me what happened last night." Jenna launched into her prepared defense. It was a masterpiece of manipulation and deflection. "I made a mistake," she admitted, her voice trembling artfully. "I shouldn't have taken her out of the house. I know that. But Leo is blowing this completely out of proportion. He's been looking for a reason to attack me, to make me look like a bad mother. He's trying to take my daughter away from me." She started to cry, turning her tear-filled eyes to Mom. I was scared. He screamed at me, and I was all alone with the baby. Derek was just trying to help. He said we could come to his place where it was safe and quiet. It was so twisted, so divorced from reality, that I almost gasped. Dad listened to the entire performance without interruption, his expression unreadable. When she finished, her sobs subsiding into pitiful sniffles, he didn't even look at her. He turned to me. "Leo, your turn." I took a deep breath. I didn't talk about last night. I started at the beginning. I opened my notebook. On September 24th, I began, my voice clear and steady. Jenna was supposed to take Scarlett for her 18-month checkup. She missed the appointment because she went to a concert with her friends. I had to reschedule it for the following week, taking an unpaid day off from my job. I continued, page by page, entry by entry. I laid out the facts, stripped of emotion, the missed appointments, the late-night partying, the lies about work. I detailed the financial burden, pushing the stack of receipts across the table. This is a receipt for $400 for daycare, which Jenna claimed she paid. This is a receipt for $85 for prescription medication. This is a receipt for $120 for diapers and formula for the month of October. I spoke for 10 minutes, my voice never wavering. With each documented failure, I could feel the energy in the room shifting. The foundation of Jenna's victim narrative was crumbling. Brick by brick, Mom was staring at the receipts, her face a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. Jenna had shrunk in her chair, her defiance replaced by a sullen, trapped silence. Finally, I played my trump card. I took out my phone and played the audio I had recorded of her conversation with Derek. Her voice filled the silent room, light and carefree. It's like having a live-in nanny, but for free. It gives us way more freedom. The recording ended. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of the final lie dying. Jenna stared at the phone as if it were a snake. I didn't mean it like that," she stammered, but the words were hollow, useless. Dad pushed his chair back and stood up. He walked around the table and stood behind Jenna's chair. He was a big man, and his presence was overwhelming. "You have used this family," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have used your mother. You have used your brother. But worst of all, you have used that little girl upstairs. You have treated her not as a daughter, but as an obstacle, an inconvenience you could hand off whenever your real life came calling." Jenna started to sob, but this time, it was the sound of genuine fear. "I'm going to give you a choice, Jenna," Dad continued, his voice resonating with a finality that chilled me to the bone. "A choice you should have made a long time ago. You can either choose to be a mother, or you can choose to be free, but you can't have both anymore." He laid out the terms, cold and brutal. "Choice 1, you stay in this house. You get a full-time job. Your entire paycheck is deposited into an account that I control. For Scarlett's expenses, you will be home every night by 7 o'clock. No exceptions. You will be responsible for her feedings, her baths, her bedtime stories. You will attend every doctor's appointment. You will live the life of a full-time, single mother. Your social life is over." He paused, letting the weight of the sentence sink in. "Choice 2, you leave. You pack a bag and you walk out that door tonight. You can go to Derek. You can have your freedom. You can live your best life, just like you said. But you will sign over full legal custody of Scarlett to Leo. You will have supervised visitation, once a month, at our discretion. You will effectively cease to be her mother." My head snapped up. I stared at my dad, stunned. He had seen it. He had seen that I was the only one who could truly give Scarlett the stability she needed. Jenna was staring at him, her face a mess of tears and shock. You can't be serious." She choked out. "You'd make me choose. I'm your daughter. And she," Dad said, pointing a finger toward the ceiling, toward Scarlett's room, "is my granddaughter. And her life, her safety, comes first. This family has enabled you for the last time. Your free ride is over. So you choose, right now, your daughter, or your freedom." The room was silent again. But this time, it was the silence of a held breath, the silence of a life hanging in the balance. We all looked at Jenna. Her face was a canvas of warring emotions: panic, anger, resentment. But underneath it all, I saw something else. I saw the flicker of a calculation. And in that horrifying moment, I knew exactly what she was going to choose. The choice hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It felt like the world had stopped spinning, and all of us were frozen in this single, terrible moment. Jenna stared at my father, her mouth slightly agape, the tears on her face seeming to dry in the heat of her frantic internal debate. She wasn't weighing love against duty. She was weighing one life sentence against another, the prison of motherhood versus the prison of exile. My mom made a soft, wounded sound, a mother's instinctive protest against an impossible choice. "Mark, please," she whispered, her voice ragged. "Don't do this. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Dad said, his voice unyielding, his eyes never leaving Jenna's face. "We've tried every other way. This is what's left." Jenna's gaze flickered from Dad's stony expression to Mom's tear-streaked face. She was looking for an ally, a lifeline. But Mom, for the first time, had no rescue to offer. She just looked broken, defeated by the truth she could no longer deny. Finally, Jenna's eyes met mine. There was no plea for help in them, only a deep, burning resentment. She blamed me for exposing her, for forcing this reckoning. In her mind, she was the victim, and I was her executioner. Her face hardened, the last vestiges of her feigned sorrow melting away to reveal the cold, selfish core beneath. She took a deep, shuddering breath and pushed her chair back, the legs scraping harshly against the wooden floor. She stood up. "Fine," she said, her voice brittle as glass. Just that one word. It held a universe of meaning. It was an abdication, a surrender, a choice. She turned, not to look at Scarlett's room, not to look at any of us, but and walked out of the dining room. We heard her footsteps pounding up the stairs, the slam of her bedroom door, and then the sound of drawers being wrenched open. She was packing. The finality of it was stunning. There was no dramatic plea, no last-minute change of heart. She had made her choice with a swift, cold efficiency that was more damning than any angry outburst could have been. She chose freedom. She chose herself. My mom let out a sob that seemed to be torn from the very depths of her soul. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. My dad didn't go to her. He just stood there, his posture rigid, his face a mask of grim resolve. He had passed the sentence, and now he would watch it be carried out. I felt numb. There was no triumph, no sense of victory, just a vast, hollow emptiness. I had won. I had saved Scarlett, but the cost was my family, ripped into right before my eyes. 20 minutes later, Jenna came back down the stairs, pulling a small suitcase behind her. She was wearing her jacket, and her purse was slung over her shoulder. Her face was scrubbed clean of tears, her expression hard and defiant. She was already disconnecting, building walls around herself. She stopped at the edge of the living room, refusing to come any closer. "I'll have Derek wire you money for a lawyer," she said, her voice clipped and businesslike. "To handle the paperwork. Just send me the bill." She looked at our parents. "I'll call you when I get settled." She didn't look at me at all, and she never once looked up the stairs toward the room where her daughter was sleeping. She turned and walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold November night. The door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing the finality of a gavel striking wood. And then she was gone. The silence she left behind was profound. It was the silence of amputation. A part of our family had been severed, and we were left bleeding. Mom's sobs were the only sound, a heartbreaking testament to the loss. Dad finally moved. He walked over to my mother and placed a hand on her shoulder. "He'll be here in the morning," he said, his voice softer now. "Who?" Mom asked through her tears. "My lawyer," Dad replied, "to get the process started. For Leo." He looked at me then, and the hardness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. "It's on you now, son. It's a heavy weight." "I know," I said, my own voice sounding distant. "Foreign. I'm ready." But was I? At 19, I was about to become the legal guardian of a toddler. My life, my future F1 I had planned with college, a career, maybe a family of my own someday had just been irrevocably altered. A path I had never intended to walk was now laid out before me, and I had no choice but to follow it. That night, I didn't sleep in my own bed. I pulled the old rocking chair into Scarlett's room and sat there all night, just watching her. The soft glow of the nightlight illuminated her peaceful face, her tiny chest rising and falling. She was safe. That was the only thought I could hold on to, the one solid piece of ground in a world that had turned to quicksand. I had done this for her. I would do anything for her. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and quiet, painful adjustments. The lawyer, a kind, no-nonsense man named Mr. Henderson, guided us through the process of establishing legal guardianship. Jenna was true to her word. She didn't fight it. She signed every paper put in front of her without contest. Her signature a neat, detached scrawl that severed her parental rights as cleanly as a knife. She was a ghost in the proceedings, communicating only through her lawyer, a disembodied presence in the dismantling of her own life. At home, the rhythm of our lives changed. The space Jenna had occupied, both physically and emotionally, was now a void. Mom walked through her days with a deep-seated grief that manifested as a quiet, constant sadness. She poured all of her thwarted maternal energy into Scarlett, helping me with a devotion that was both touching and heartbreaking. She was trying to atone, to make up for the love and attention she hadn't been able to give to her granddaughter before. Dad became more present. He started coming home from work earlier, his silence less about distance and more about observation. I would find him sitting on the floor, awkwardly trying to build a block tower with Scarlett, a small, tentative smile on his face when she would clap her hands in delight. He was trying to relearn how to be a grandfather, now that the buffer of his dysfunctional daughter was gone. And me, I was learning how to be a father. I was the one who woke up in the night when she had a bad dream. I was the one who scheduled her doctor's appointments and attended the parent-teacher conferences at daycare. I was the one who kissed her scraped knees and taught her how to say please and thank you. My world, once filled with lectures and term papers and weekend plans with friends, now revolved around nap schedules and playdates and the Wiggles. My friends tried to understand. Marcus was my rock, always there to listen or to just sit with me in comfortable silence. But there was a growing chasm between my life and theirs. While they were stressing about finals and planning spring break trips, I was worrying about Scarlett's teething pain and trying to figure out how to potty train a toddler. I was an adult in a way they couldn't yet comprehend. I was lonely, but I wasn't alone. I had Scarlett. One afternoon, about a month after Jenna left, I was going through some old boxes in the attic, looking for winter clothes. I found a photo album I hadn't seen in years. It was from when Jenna and I were little. I sat on the dusty floor, flipping through the pages. There were pictures of us as happy, smiling kids building sandcastles, opening Christmas presents, riding bikes. In one photo, a 7-year-old Jenna was holding me, a newborn baby, in her arms. She was looking down at me with a look of such pure, unadulterated love and wonder. I stared at that picture for a long time, my heart aching. Where did that girl go? What happened to turn that loving sister into the cold, selfish stranger who had walked out of our lives without a backward glance? I knew it wasn't one single thing, but a long, slow erosion of character, a series of wrong choices that had led her down a path away from us, away from her daughter. I closed the album. That girl was gone. Mourning her wouldn't bring her back. My new reality was downstairs, probably trying to stick Cheerios up her nose. I put the album away and went back to her. She was my future. She was my responsibility. She was my love. The legal process culminated on a cold, gray morning in a sterile courtroom. It was just me, my parents, and Mr. Henderson. The judge, a woman with kind eyes, reviewed the paperwork. She asked me a few questions. Did I understand the responsibility I was taking on? Was I prepared for the sacrifices it would require? Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice clear. I am. She looked at the signed documents from Jenna, her expression unreadable. Then she looked at me. In my years on the bench, she said softly, I have seen love in many forms. This is one of the purest. The court approves the petition for guardianship. She stamped the final document with a loud, definitive thud. It was done. I was officially Scarlett's guardian, her parent. As we walked out of the courthouse, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, soft and silent, blanketing the city in a clean, white sheet. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start. The first year was the hardest. It was a year of forging a new kind of family from the wreckage of the old one. The absence of Jenna was a constant, low-grade ache, like a phantom limb. We didn't talk about her much, but her presence lingered in the empty chair at the dinner table, in the clothes she'd left behind in her closet, in the questions Scarlett was still too young to ask, but that I knew were coming. My life became a meticulously organized dance between my online college courses, my part-time job shelving books at the local library, and the all-consuming, wonderful, exhausting reality of raising a toddler. My social life evaporated, replaced by late-night study sessions after Scarlett was asleep and weekends spent at the park. Instead of at parties, there were moments of overwhelming frustration, moments when the sheer weight of the responsibility felt like it was going to suffocate me. I would lock myself in the bathroom for 5 minutes, just to breathe, my head pressed against the cool wood of the door, listening to Scarlett babbling on the other side. But for every moment of doubt, there were 100 moments of pure, unadulterated joy. There was the first time Scarlett pointed at me and said, "Not Uncle Leo, but Dada." My heart both swelled and broke in that instant. I corrected her gently. "No, sweet girl, I'm your Uncle Leo." But she just smiled, patted my cheek, and said it again, with more conviction this time, Dada. I eventually stopped correcting her. It was the name she had chosen for me, the role she saw me in, and maybe, in all the ways that mattered. She was right. There was the day she took her first real steps on her own, toddling unsteadily from the couch into my waiting arms, her face a perfect portrait of triumph. There were the nights we'd build forts out of blankets in the living room and read stories by flashlight until she fell asleep, her small head resting on my chest. In these quiet, simple moments, I found a sense of purpose I had never known. I wasn't just living for myself anymore. I was living for her. My parents were my pillars. Dad, once a distant figure, became an active, engaged grandfather. He taught Scarlett how to throw a ball, patiently retying her tiny sneakers a dozen times. He would come home from work and his first question would always be, "Where's my girl?" He found a new softness in his role as a grandfather, a tenderness he hadn't always shown as a father. Mom healed in her own way. She channeled her grief into love, becoming the grandmother every child dreams of. She baked cookies. She organized craft projects. She sang lullabies. She and I became a team, a well-oiled machine dedicated to Scarlett's happiness. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, she turned to me, her eyes glistening. "I'm so proud of you, Leo," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "What you've done, the man you've become. I'm so proud." She paused, her expression clouded with an old pain. "And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, that I didn't listen." "It's okay, Mom," I said, and I meant it. We couldn't change the past. We could only build a better future. Jenna kept her distance. She sent a generic birthday card for Scarlett's second birthday. The signature a neat, impersonal script. There was no personal message, no phone call. According to her social media, which I couldn't help but check occasionally, she and Derek had moved to a sunny apartment in California. Her feed was a curated collection of beach sunsets, trendy restaurants, and smiling selfies. There were no pictures of her daughter. It was as if Scarlett, and all of us, had been a chapter in a book she had finished and put away on a high shelf to gather dust. The first real test of our new family structure came when Scarlett was almost 3. She had started asking questions, simple ones at first. "Where my mommy?" she asked one day, looking at a picture of another family at the park. My heart stopped. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 1,000 times, but I was still unprepared. I knelt down in front of her, taking her small hands in mine. "Your mommy's name is Jenna," I said, my voice steady. "She's your mom, and she loves you very much, but she lives very, very far away right now, and sometimes mommies and daddies can't take care of their babies, even if they want to, so they ask someone who loves them very, very much to help." And she asked me. She looked at me, her little brow furrowed in concentration, processing the information. "You my dada," she said, her voice firm, as if stating the one fact she was sure of. "Yes, sweet girl," I said, a lump forming in my throat. "I'm your dada." It was enough for now. I knew there would be more questions, harder questions. As she got older, there would be pain and confusion, but I also knew that we would face it together, with honesty and with love. Years passed. The sharp edges of the trauma began to soften. Life settled into a new, beautiful normal. I finished my associate's degree and got a job working in the IT department of the local school district. A stable 9-to-5 job that allowed me to be home for Scarlett every afternoon. Our little house, once a battleground of tension and resentment, was now filled with laughter. When Scarlett was 5 years old, she came home from her first day of kindergarten, her eyes shining with excitement. She handed me a piece of paper. It was a drawing, a classic kid's masterpiece of stick figures with wild, colorful hair. "It's our family," she announced proudly. There were 4 figures, a tall one with glasses that was clearly me, to slightly smaller ones holding hands that were her Grandma Susan and Grandpa Mark, and the smallest figure, in the center, with a giant, sunny smile, was her. Above us, she had drawn a big, yellow sun and a crooked, happy-looking house. I stared at the drawing, my vision blurring. This was it. This was what we had built from the ashes. A family, not a perfect one, not a traditional one, but a real one. One held together not by obligation or biology, but by choice, by love. That night, after I tucked Scarlett into bed, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a California area code. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Leo." The voice was thin, hesitant, instantly recognizable. It was Jenna. I was silent for a moment, 1,000 emotions swirling inside me. "Jenna," I finally said, my voice flat. "Hi," she said, a nervous laugh in her voice. "Long time no talk. How are you?" "We're fine," I said. The "we" was deliberate. "That's good. That's really good," she said, rambling slightly. Listen, the reason I'm calling, Derek and we broke up, and I've been doing a lot of thinking. About everything. About her. She couldn't even say Scarlett's name. I was thinking, maybe I could come visit. See her. I closed my eyes. The prodigal daughter wanted to return. After 4 years of near total silence, she wanted to reappear in our lives. My first instinct was a cold, hard no. A surge of protective anger rose in me. How dare she? How dare she think she could just waltz back in after everything she had done? But then I thought of Scarlett. I thought of the questions she would ask, the hole in her life that I could never completely fill, no matter how much I loved her. I took a deep breath. The choice laid out before me, clear and simple. I could choose anger and resentment, or I could choose the faint, flickering possibility of grace. For Scarlett's sake. Okay, Jenna, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You can visit. We can talk. But you need to understand something. This is her home now. We are her family. You are a guest, and you will have to earn back her trust, and mine. There was a pause on the other end, and then I heard a small, quiet sob. It was the first sound of genuine remorse I had ever heard from her. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Jenna could ever truly be a mother, or if her return would only bring more pain. But as I hung up the phone, I walked to Scarlett's room and stood in the doorway, watching her sleep, her face peaceful in the soft glow of her nightlight. My life wasn't what I had planned. It was harder, messier, and more complicated than I ever could have imagined. But looking at her, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it was also richer, fuller, and more filled with love than any other life I could have chosen. I had lost a sister, but I had found my purpose. I had found my daughter. I had found my home.